This is the phase where God restores confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but quiet confidence rooted in identity. You know who you are now. You know what drains you. You know what matters. You no longer chase what once chased you. You no longer fear being alone because you learned how to stand with God. God is also teaching you discernment in blessings. Not every open door is from me. Not every opportunity is meant for you. Peace will be your confirmation. Confusion will be your warning. If you have to force it, manipulate it, or compromise your values for it, it is not mine. Some of you are about to receive what you prayed for in a different form than you expected. And God says, don't reject it just because it looks unfamiliar. Growth changes perspective. Healing changes preference. What you wanted before may not be what you need now. You are stepping into a season where your prayers become simpler but deeper. Less words, more trust. Less anxiety, more surrender. You no longer pray to convince God. You pray because you know He hears you. That is maturity. God is also softening your heart again. Not making you naive, but making you compassionate. Pain tried to harden you. Disappointment tried to close you. But God says, let me soften you without breaking you. A healed heart is not a guarded heart, it is a wise one. You are learning to forgive without reopening doors that harmed you. Forgiveness releases you, boundaries protect you. God honors both. You are not unloving for choosing peace. You are not faithless for choosing distance. Even Jesus withdrew from certain people. This is where breakthrough becomes internal before it becomes visible. You think you are waiting on God, but God says, I have been waiting on your heart to rest. Rest does not mean inactivity. It means trust without tension. Effort without anxiety. Faith without panic. There is a calm settling over your life now. Not because everything is solved, but because you finally believe God is faithful. God is releasing you from comparison. Other people's pace no longer intimidates you. Other people's success no longer threatens you. You are secure in your lane. You trust God's timing for your life. That is freedom. Some of you are about to become an answer to someone else's prayer. Not through preaching, but through presence. Through empathy. Through understanding. Through testimony. God says, what you survived will help someone else breathe again. Jesus did not rush his ministry. He waited. He prayed. He listened. And when the time came, he moved with authority and compassion. God says, move like that. Don't rush what requires prayer. Don't speak what requires wisdom. Don't decide what requires patience. You may still feel nervous about the future. That's okay. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is moving forward with God despite fear. And God promises this, I will not leave you halfway. I will not guide you to abandon you. This is not a season of striving. This is a season of alignment. Where your thoughts, your faith, and your actions begin to agree. Where you stop fighting yourself. Where you stop doubting every step. Where you trust the God who carried you this far. If you are listening and your heart feels lighter than before, that is not emotion. That is release. God is lifting burdens you were never meant to carry forever. You are allowed to hope again. Carefully. Wisely. Faithfully. Stay open. Stay prayerful. Stay grounded. Because what comes next will require the peace you now carry, the wisdom you now have, and the faith you fought to keep. God is with you. Jesus walks ahead of you. And the breakthrough you feared was delayed is being released in the right way, at the right time, for the right reason. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a steadier, deeper, God-led life. This is the season where God does not shout, He confirms. Where He does not rush, He seals. You have already come through pain, preparation, and breakthrough, but now God is strengthening what He has given you so it will last. God says, I am not testing you to fail you. I am refining you to secure you. What you are carrying now is too valuable to be left unprotected. There are moments when everything seems calm, yet you feel alert inside. That is discernment awakening. God is sharpening your spiritual senses. You are no longer impressed by appearances. You are no longer moved by pressure. You are learning to pause, pray, and listen. This is not hesitation, this is wisdom. Some of you may notice small challenges returning, old thoughts, familiar fears, subtle temptations. Do not be alarmed. God says, this is the final refining. What once controlled you is now being confronted so it can lose its power completely. You are no longer fighting to survive. You are standing to remain free. Jesus Himself faced temptation after confirmation. After the Father said, This is my beloved Son, the testing came. Not to question His identity, but to strengthen it. God says, remember who you are. You are not defined by feelings. You are not defined by failures. You are defined by God's word over your life. This is where obedience becomes quieter but stronger. You don't announce every step anymore. You don't explain every decision. You don't need validation to move forward. God has trained your spirit to recognize His voice above noise. And when God speaks, you listen, even if it doesn't make sense immediately. You are learning that discipline protects blessing. Prayer protects peace. Humility protects favor. God says, guard what I have given you. Not with fear, but with faithfulness. What you fought for in prayer must be maintained in obedience. Some of you are being asked to slow down even as doors open. God says, do not rush into what I am still sealing. Speed can damage wa. Patience perfects. Take time to stay rooted. Take time to stay grateful. Take time to stay connected. You may feel moments of emotional vulnerability, but they no longer pull you backward. You feel them, acknowledge them, and release them to God. This is healing. Healing does not mean you never feel pain again. It means pain no longer controls your direction. God is teaching you how to carry blessing without losing dependence. Success can distract, but surrender keeps you grounded. God says, stay close. Not just when you need me, but when life is calm. Relationship, not rescue, is the goal. God says, this is the season where I am not only lifting you, but teaching you how to stand when you are lifted. Elevation without wisdom leads to pride, but elevation with humility leads to legacy. That is why I walked you through valleys before placing you on higher ground. You prayed for more, but you didn't realize more would require maturity. More visibility requires more integrity. More influence requires more responsibility. God says, I elevated your character before I elevate your position. This season, people will start noticing you, not because you demanded attention, but because faithfulness attracts favor. You didn't promote yourself, I positioned you. You didn't force doors open, I aligned them. You didn't manipulate outcomes, you trusted me. God says, this is divine alignment. You are stepping into rooms you once prayed to enter, but now you walk in with peace instead of pressure. You are no longer intimidated by opportunity. You are prepared for it. Fear no longer defines your decisions. Faith leads the way. Some of you are being trusted with influence over people, projects, families, ministries, or responsibilities. God says, influence is not about control, it is about stewardship. How you treat people when you are elevated matters more than how hard you work to get there. You are learning to lead like Jesus. With compassion. With truth. With humility. Jesus washed feet before he wore a crown. God says, never forget where I found you. This season, God is also teaching you discernment at a higher level. Not everyone who praises you supports you. Not everyone who follows you is for you. And not everyone who leaves you is against you. God says, ask me for wisdom, not suspicion. You no longer react emotionally. You respond spiritually. You don't need to prove your strength. Your consistency proves it. Some of you are learning how to say no to good things in order to say yes to God things. God says, not every opportunity is an assignment. Disc. Elevation exposes motives, both yours and others. That's why God keeps your heart grounded. You stay teachable. You stay prayerful. You stay dependent on me. God says, dependence keeps you safe. This season, you are not chasing success, you are building legacy. Success ends with you. Legacy lives beyond you. You are becoming mindful of what you pass down, faith, values, discipline, love, and truth. Your life is no longer just about what you achieve, it's about who you impact. Some of you will be the answer to someone else's prayer. Some of you will speak hope where there was despair. Some of you will show faith where there was fear. God says, your obedience has ripple effects. You are realizing that influence does not require perfection. It requires authenticity. People connect to your honesty more than your image. They listen because they see God at work in you, not because you are flawless, but because you are faithful. This is the season where God strengthens your voice. When you speak, there is weight. When you pray, there is authority. When you stand, there is presence. God says, that authority comes from time spent with me. Authority is not demanded. It is recognized. You are also learning to guard your heart at higher levels. Elevation brings access, and access requires boundaries. God says, boundaries protect your anointing. You don't owe everyone access to your life. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say no. God never intended you to burn out while serving Him. This season, God is restoring your strength, not just physical, but spiritual and emotional. You are learning how to pace yourself. You no longer rush ahead of God. You walk with Him. Some of you are being trusted with generational responsibility. What you break now will not bind the next generation. What you heal now will bless those who come after you. God says, you are a cycle breaker. The pain you endured stops with you. The dysfunction you. God says, now you are entering a season where your faith is no longer theoretical, it is practical. You don't just believe that I can do it, you believe that I will. And that shift changes everything. Faith that rests is faith that trusts my character, not just my power. There was a time when you prayed desperately, afraid that if I didn't move, everything would fall apart. But now, God says, you pray with confidence. Not because the situation is easy, but because you know who is in control. You have learned that panic never produced a miracle, but trust always did. This is the season where breakthroughs don't come with chaos. They come with clarity. They come with peace. They come with confirmation. God says, when I bless you now, it will not overwhelm you, it will align you. Some of you are about to see prayers answered that you prayed years ago. Prayers you forgot about. Prayers you thought were ignored. God says, I never forgot. I was waiting for the right moment, the right posture, the right heart. You didn't just ask for blessings, you asked me to change you. And because you allowed me to work in you, I can now work through you. There is a difference between blessings that excite you and blessings that sustain you. God says, I am releasing sustainable blessings. Blessings that don't pull you away from me, but draw you closer. Blessings that don't replace me, but reflect me. Some people will be surprised by what God is about to do in your life, not because it is flashy, but because it is steady. Not because it is loud, but because it is undeniable. Consistency will become your testimony. God says, you are stepping into answered prayers with wisdom. This season, God is also healing how you view success. Success is no longer about speed, it is about obedience. It is no longer about applause, it is about alignment. You are learning that obedience in private produces fruit in public. You don't need to announce your breakthrough. Fruit speaks for itself. God says, I am restoring what was lost. Not always in the same form, but in the same value, or greater. Where you lost time, I am giving wisdom. Where you lost people, I am giving peace. Where you lost confidence, I am giving authority. Some of you are about to experience restoration that feels quiet but powerful. No drama. No noise. Just God gently putting things back into place. This is the kind of restoration that doesn't reopen old wounds. It closes them. God is also preparing you for responsibility. Blessings bring responsibility, and responsibility requires maturity. That's why God trained you in seasons where nobody applauded you. This message is not random. This message is not coincidence. If you are watching this right now, God's timing brought you here. God sees you. He knows your struggles, your questions, your pain, your hopes. You may feel weary, you may feel like you're carrying burdens no one else understands, but God says, I see you and I am with you. I want you to hear this clearly. God's love for you is not based on your performance, it is based on His character. His love does not come and go with circumstances. His presence is constant, His mercy is continuous, and His faithfulness never fails. Sometimes life hurts. Sometimes storms don't seem to stop. Sometimes unanswered prayers make you wonder if God forgot you. But God says, I have never forgotten you. The silence you felt was not absence. God was working behind the scenes, strengthening you, shaping you, preparing you for what is ahead. God is near to the broken-hearted. God does not dismiss your tears. He does not ignore your deepest wounds. Every time you cried out in the dark, He was listening. Even when you whispered your prayer with trembling lips, God heard you. He felt every heartbeat, every tear, every burden. Too often we confuse delay with denial. But God says, delay is not denial. Sometimes God delays because what you're asking for will only be blessing you if your heart is ready for it. God's timing is perfect, not early, not late, perfectly aligned with what your life needs. God does not promise a life without challenges. Jesus said that storms would come. But He also promised something greater, I am with you always. Even when the winds blow, even when the waves rise, God's presence does not leave you. Storms test faith, but faith anchored in God never drifts. There may have been seasons where you prayed and saw no answer, where you expected breakthrough but only felt waiting. God says, do not lose hope. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. What you asked for in prayer is already on the way. God does not rush blessings without preparation. Sometimes He works quietly within you because He knows what you will face once your blessing arrives. You needed patience. You needed character. You needed perseverance. God was forming strength inside you that the world will see later. If you feel invisible, God says to you, I see you. If you feel rejected, God says, I chose you. If you feel not good enough, God says, I made you. You are not an accident. You are not forgotten. Your life has purpose. Your story matters. And God is writing it. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came not to condemn you, but to save you. He took your shame, your sin, your guilt, and your burden. He carried it on the cross so that you could be free. Not free from problems, but free from the power of guilt and fear. That is grace, unearned, unmerited, unbreakable. Faith is not about never being scared. Faith is about trusting God even when your heart trembles. Faith is lifting your hands to God on the days when your voice shakes. God honors that faith. God sees you cling to Him even when all you have left is trust. God is calling you deeper into relationship, not just into religion, not just into routine. He is inviting you into a life where His presence becomes your strength. A life where peace replaces panic, hope replaces fear, and trust replaces uncertainty. Let God be bigger than your problems, bigger than your past, bigger than your mistakes. He is not impressed by your perfection, He is moved by your surrender. When you say, God, I cannot do this alone, I need you. You open the door for him to walk with you, guide you, strengthen you. Maybe you're afraid to hope again because hope let you down before. God says, hope in me will never shame you. He keeps his promises. He remembers his word. And he is faithful even when your faith feels weak. God knows your heart. He knows what you've been through. And he knows what you're capable of with him beside you. You are stronger than. This message continues because God is still reaching for your heart. You may not realize it, but the fact that you are still listening means something inside you refuses to give up. God says, I see that part of you. Even when you felt empty, even when faith felt weak, even when prayer felt heavy, you stayed. And staying matters more than you think. There were moments you questioned yourself. You wondered if you were doing enough, believing enough, trusting enough. But God says, you were never asked to be enough. I am enough. Faith is not measured by how strong you feel, but by how willing you are to keep coming back to God, even when you feel unsure. Some of you are carrying disappointment from prayers that did not turn out the way you expected. You trusted God, but the outcome hurt. God says, I understand your disappointment. He is not offended by your honesty. He is not threatened by your questions. He invites you to bring your confusion to him instead of carrying it alone. God wants you to understand this truth deeply. Unanswered prayers are not ignored prayers. Sometimes God answers by redirecting. Sometimes he answers by protecting. Sometimes he answers by strengthening you instead of changing the situation. And one day, you will look back and realize that what felt like rejection was actually rescue. You have been stronger than people realize. You showed up when it was hard. You smiled when you were breaking. You encouraged others while needing encouragement yourself. God says, I saw that. Heaven notices sacrifices people overlook. And God never forgets faith expressed in quiet obedience. There are people listening who feel spiritually dry. You still believe in God, but you don't feel him like you used to. God says, do not confuse feelings with presence. I am with you even when emotions are silent. Faith that continues without feeling is mature faith. It is rooted, not emotional. God is also healing the way you think. Your mind has been tired from overthinking, replaying the past, worrying about the future. God says, give me your thoughts. Peace begins in the mind. When you surrender your thoughts, your heart will follow. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too far gone. You are not a lost cause. God is a restorer. Jesus did not come for perfect people, he came for honest hearts. He came for the weary, the doubting, the wounded. And he still comes today. God knows you feel pressure to have everything figured out. But he says, you don't need to see the whole path. You only need to trust the next step. Faith is not clarity about the future, it is confidence in God's character. There are doors God closed that you still think about. Paths that didn't work out. Relationships that ended painfully. God says, I closed those doors